All right. Like many people, I have always worked 2 or more hopelessly improbable jobs at once. The basic premise being, do something that pays the bills alongside something more fulfilling. Interestingly, out of all of my more superficially exotic jobs and gigs, it was babysitting that's always felt the most radical to me. Nothing that anybody would consider to be especially remarkable actually happened, but I believe that's what made it so extraordinary. I'd been doing full body casts at a sculpture studio in Greenpoint, which simply required I shave my entire body so a team of artists could cover me up with plaster of Paris. With nothing but 2 long straws poking out my nose, keeping me tethered to the physical world, I was buried alive until the plaster dried and I was chiseled out again, which felt equally transcendental and terrifying. But once the studio finished with the project, I'd have nothing to do really but wait for my hair to grow back, all the while quickly running out of cash. So I was thrilled when I saw an email from Linda in my inbox. Linda was the owner of this catering company I'd worked with in the past, and I assumed she'd reached out with details about the next wedding event, Sweet 16, or Upper East Side bar mitzvah. Instead, she wondered if I was available to pick up her 2 boys from their after-school program in Cobble Hill. I told her I was. She provided the school's address, the pickup time, and 2 names, Pete and Larry, no additional information. I was going to have to wing this one, and I was incredibly nervous. It wasn't until I entered PS 122 that I realized I couldn't have picked these boys out of a lineup. And before I was even able to problem solve, a frenzied adult greeted me in the large open foyer beyond which were 3 tiers of classrooms spread and stacked before me. All I had to do was choose the correct door. If I chose incorrectly, as I understood it, an avalanche of strange offspring would spill forth in unison, throwing their bodies over the railings like a stampede of buffalo herded from a cliff. Hi, are you picking somebody up from youth club? I imagined something very wrong. I pictured Hitler Youth, a gymnasium of short haircuts with fades on the side, trouser shorts, and button-up boots. But I gave her the boys' names, and she repeated them into her walkie-talkie. Larry, the youngest at 5 years old, was the first to come barreling out from somewhere along the 2nd floor and straddled the banister. He slid down expertly, right to the bottom of the steps where I was standing. I already felt confronted with some sort of moral dilemma. How would I handle this? It felt like a trick. I was paranoid, which made the fact that I looked like a hairless tweaker all the more real, or at least I thought. They probably pictured me shaving my eyebrows off during a hysterical weekend-long chemsex speed binge. These were the types of crazy thoughts I had in heteronormative spaces, let alone in elementary school. I plucked Larry off the stairs as carefully as I could and placed him back on his feet and said something casual and non-threatening about how he probs shouldn't do that. Although I really had no idea. Personally, I was really impressed with his execution. He was surprisingly light and didn't fight back or disintegrate into a pile of ash under my maneuvering, which was encouragement when I needed it most. I was definitely being watched, and I knew that. I was a queer, lazy sex worker with an interest in subversive art. I was body positive, sex positive, and although I had never even seen speed, I probably drank too much. I just knew the jig was about to be up. I'd be deemed unfit. Pete, 3 years older, certainly wasn't impressed. Who are you? He wanted to know as he approached, an unbelievable amount of clothing spilling from his backpack and dragging on the ground below. Although I could tell this had become commonplace for him. That is, I knew how his mother operated, and I'm sure she'd wrangled many an unsuspecting person in the last minutes to come to her rescue. She was a single parent, a not so successful business owner, but more importantly, she was a full-time partier who skated by the skin of her teeth. At this point, I'd been surrounded on all sides by the real parents/babysitters, and Pete's inquiry wasn't necessarily comforting for them to hear if I had to guess. After a quick introduction and fairly certain I had the correct children, I made for the door with Pete and Larry in tow. I had the same nervous trepidation a shoplifter might have, not knowing if at the last moment the metal detector would go off or not. Some lady did stop us on our way out to let me know how much she loved Pete and Larry, although the boys appeared indifferent at best. She then asked me if I was their father. In my heightened anxiety, the question seemed to possess a certain amount of suspicion. I thought briefly about making a run for it. A kid tucked under each arm, like that funny little video of the raccoon running away on its hind legs with the stolen cat foods in its little paw hands. No, just a friend of their mother's, I replied after a beat and with a calmness that completely surprised me. Maybe this wouldn't be so difficult after all. Maybe this lady was just really nosy. I noticed Larry's shoes had strips of Velcro pulled well beyond their tightening duties, the extra bit resembling the winged footwear of Hermes, and Pete's were simply adorable puddles of loose shoestrings. As I tied them, my vantage oddly supplicate, the prying lady's daughter stared down at me with dumb curiosity. I caught myself as a, "What are you looking at?" almost slid past my lips, unchecked, a dormant instinct activated. In my earnest position, she must have thought I seemed quite odd and non-threatening, but as soon as I stood back up, her condescending sneer fell from her face and she inched closer to the protection of her mother, who was still giving unrequited adoration to Larry. If anybody caught that psychic standoff, I figured I'd just say, "She started it." Thank you.